Marcus Johnson's life was ordinary, until one tragic event shattered everything he believed in. But when strange details begin to surface, he finds himself pulled into a chilling mystery that no parent should ever face. What he uncovers will change everything. Stay with us until the end. You won't believe the truth. Like, share, and subscribe so you never miss stories that reveal the darkness hidden in plain sight. The scent of cinnamon toast and scrambled eggs filled the small kitchen as sunlight spilled through the window of the Johnson household. It was a peaceful Sunday morning, the kind of morning Marcus Johnson cherished the most. His 10-year-old twins, Alia and Logan, sat at the kitchen table, each focused on their drawings. Alia's head was tilted slightly, her tongue poking out in concentration as she sketched with quick strokes. Logan, quieter and more reserved, worked slowly beside her, his brows furrowed over every line. Marcus flipped the eggs in the pan, smiling at the sound of their pencils scratching paper. "What are you working on this time, baby girl?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder at Elia. "A picture of us," she said proudly, holding it up. "You, me, and Logan under a big tree. I'm making your muscles even bigger this time." Marcus chuckled, flexing one arm dramatically. "Make sure everyone knows I'm the strongest dad in the world." "You already are," Elia grinned. Her twin nodded silently in agreement. Moments like this made Marcus feel complete. After their mother had left years ago, it had just been the three of them. He'd built his life around his children, his world anchored by their laughter and their love. By noon, the kids were begging to go outside. The neighborhood playground was only a few blocks away, and the day was unusually warm for early spring. Birds chirped outside, and the sun cast a golden glow across their quiet suburban street. Marcus hesitated. "I could take you," he said. "No," Elia groaned. "We're not babies. Just let us go, please." Logan looked uncertain, but eventually nodded along with his sister. "Be back in 1 hour," Marcus said firmly, "before lunch." "We will," Elia called, already pulling on her sneakers. Marcus watched them disappear down the street. Logan looked back once, a strange look in his eyes, then hurried to catch up with his sister. The next hour crawled. Marcus tried to focus on the bills spread across the table, but his gaze kept drifting to the clock. Something gnawed at his gut, an unease he couldn't explain. Maybe it was just the overprotective father in him, but when the hour passed and the twins didn't return, the discomfort sharpened into dread. 15 more minutes. Then 30. Then a knock at the door. He opened it to find Logan standing alone, his face pale, his hands trembling. "Where's your sister?" Marcus asked, his voice already cracking. Logan opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes welled with tears. She went behind the swings," he finally said. "She said she saw something shiny. She told me to wait. And then she was gone." Marcus's heart dropped into his stomach. Without another word, he grabbed his keys, scooped Logan into the car, and drove straight to the playground. Police were already there. Someone had called it in. A child had fallen, they said. A girl. Found unconscious at the edge of the wooded area behind the park. They wouldn't let him through at first. An officer tried to hold him back, but the look in Marcus's eyes must have been too much. They let him see her. Elia's body lay still beneath a silver tarp, her hair tangled, dirt on her cheeks. Blood had dried along her temple. Marcus dropped to his knees. They told him she'd climbed the rocks and fell. They called it an accident. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The world blurred. The hospital declared her dead on arrival. The coroner's report cited blunt force trauma to the head. A tragic fall, nothing more. But even in his devastation, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. Elia had climbed those rocks before, hundreds of times. She was cautious, balanced, not reckless. He kept replaying Logan's words. She said she saw something shiny. Logan's mind was fractured by trauma. He wouldn't, or couldn't, say more. The days that followed were hollow, a blur of condolences and casseroles from neighbors Marcus barely knew. His sister, Clara, flew in from Atlanta and took over funeral arrangements. Marcus could barely get out of bed. The funeral happened too soon. He didn't feel ready, but Clara said it was time. The sky was heavy with clouds the morning they laid Elia to rest. The small white casket looked far too clean and new among the aging, moss-covered gravestones. Marcus stood like a statue as the pastor spoke. The words passed over him like wind. But it wasn't until the wake, when he stood alone over his daughter's casket, that the weight of his suspicion took root. Elia's skin was too pale, her face too calm, too arranged. He bent over and kissed her forehead. It was cold, waxy. Then he saw them, her wrists, bruises, not just from a fall. These looked like grip marks, tight, purplish impressions where someone's fingers might have been. He looked closer. Her fingernails, delicate, dirt still beneath them. Marcus's heart stuttered. How could there be dirt under her nails? She'd been taken straight from the hospital to the funeral home. No time for burial. No time for her to claw at anything. He turned to Clara. She didn't have dirt under her nails before, he whispered. Clara's expression tightened. You're exhausted, Marcus. Please don't do this to yourself. But it wouldn't leave him. That image. That impossibility. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Marcus sat alone in Elia's room. Her drawings still scattered across the desk, the smell of her lavender shampoo still clinging to her pillow. He pulled out his laptop, searched hidden camera retailers. It was madness. He knew that, but grief twisted the mind in strange ways. The next morning, before the burial, he returned to the funeral home under the pretense of saying goodbye one last time. He brought the camera, small and sleek, with night vision and a microphone. He apologized to his daughter in a whisper as he tucked it gently into the fabric of her casket, angled toward her face. His fingers trembled. I have to know, he whispered, and then he closed the lid. That night, he sat in the dark, the laptop open in front of him, the live feed showing nothing but blackness and grain. Silence. He told himself he was crazy, but the feeling wouldn't go away. He had to know. He had to understand what really happened to his little girl, even if the truth destroyed him. Marcus barely slept that night. He sat motionless in the dim glow of his laptop screen, the camera feed from Elia's coffin playing silently before him. The image was nothing but blackness, shadows layered upon shadows, but he watched anyway, eyes red and dry, fingers curled tensely around a mug of untouched coffee. Every small flicker, every grainy twitch of the feed sent a spike through his chest. Was it just the camera adjusting, the settling of the fabric inside the coffin? Or was someone there? Hours passed without movement. He began to question his sanity. Maybe Clara was right. Maybe the dirt, the bruises, the feeling that something was off. All of it was grief twisting his mind. But even as he tried to rationalize it, that unease still clawed at the edge of his thoughts. It wasn't just grief. It was instinct. Around 3:17 a.m., something flickered across the feed, a quick, subtle distortion in the lower right corner. Marcus leaned in. His hand hovered over the mouse. Static? His heart pounded. Then it happened again. Slight. A movement. Maybe fabric shifting. He cranked the audio to maximum. Nothing. Then, beneath the soft white noise of the microphone, he heard it. A faint, nearly imperceptible sound, like a whisper carried on wind through a crack. Quick, no one will notice. His blood turned cold. He sat frozen, eyes wide. He hit rewind and played it again. Slower. Quick, no one will notice. It was a voice. Male, low, calm, confident, not panicked, not grieving. The kind of voice that came from someone doing something they weren't supposed to do, and had done it before. He replayed the clip a dozen times, memorizing every inflection. Then another voice joined, fainter, deeper. Just get it done. Marcus's entire body tensed. He grabbed the nearest flash drive and saved the recording immediately, uploading copies to the cloud, emailing it to himself, backing it up on every device he could find. He wasn't taking any chances. The silence that followed was suffocating. His first instinct was to call the police, but he stopped himself. What would he say? That he bugged his daughter's coffin and now thought men had been inside it after death. They'd write him off. Crazy, grieving father. He needed more. He needed proof that couldn't be ignored. At dawn, Clara came down the stairs, rubbing her eyes, finding him still in the same spot. You haven't slept, she said, glancing at the dark bags under his eyes. No, Marcus replied, eyes still glued to the screen. She stepped closer and saw the grainy feed. What is that? He hesitated. It's a live feed from Elia's coffin. Clara flinched. Jesus, Marcus. I had to do it, he said. I couldn't shake the feeling. And I was right. He played the clip for her. Her expression went blank as the voice whispered through the speakers. Is this some kind of trick? She asked, visibly shaken. No, he said quietly. This is real. And I think they did something to her. I think she was still alive. Clara sat down slowly. That's not possible. Marcus turned toward her. She had dirt under her nails, bruises on her wrists. You saw them. She fell. No, she was taken, and whatever happened after, it wasn't just an accident. He stood up and began pacing, his mind racing. I'm going to find someone who will listen. Who? The police already closed the case. Then not the police. He remembered someone, an old contact from years ago, Julia Reyes, a local journalist with a reputation for digging up what no one wanted found. She'd once exposed corruption in a private school board. Maybe this was the kind of story she'd take on. He called her that afternoon. Her voice was guarded at first, but when he mentioned the recording, her tone shifted. Meet me, she said, tomorrow, 2 p.m. Redbird Cafe. That night, Marcus tried to rest, but his mind wouldn't allow it. He watched the recording again and again. Near midnight, another flicker appeared on the screen. This one more distinct. A hand. Small, pale. It moved slightly, fingers curling inward. Marcus choked on a breath, leaning so close to the screen his nose nearly touched it. It happened again. A scraping noise, like fingernails against wood. He bolted upright, heart in his throat. It couldn't be. Couldn't. She was gone. He had seen her, touched her, but the camera didn't lie. His phone buzzed on the table. No caller ID. He answered. Silence. Then a soft click. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for another flash drive, copied everything again, and shoved it into his jacket pocket. The next day, he arrived early at the Redbird Cafe. Julia was already there, seated in a booth with her laptop open, typing furiously. She was younger than he remembered, her sharp brown eyes scanning him as he approached. He slid the flash drive across the table. "I need you to see it," he said. Julia raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She plugged it into her laptop, slipped on headphones, and hit play. Marcus watched her face. The curiosity drained quickly, replaced by confusion, then concern, then horror. She ripped the headphones off. "What the hell is this?" "Proof," Marcus said, "that they did something to her." "You're saying she was alive? In there?" He nodded once. "Or they put her in after she died. Either way, it's wrong." Julia leaned back. "This is huge, but it's not enough. We need more. I can't go back to the funeral home. They already shut me down. Then we find someone who used to work there, someone who's willing to talk." That evening, they found Kevin Foster, former embalmer, fired under vague circumstances. Julia got his number from a private forum of whistleblowers. He agreed to meet, reluctantly. They found him in a Greasy Spoon diner off the highway. Kevin looked nervous, thin, fidgeting with a spoon as they sat across from him. "I don't know what you want me to say," he mumbled. "We need the truth," Marcus said. "What happens in that funeral home?" Kevin hesitated. "They cut corners, a lot. Switched bodies, reused caskets, covered things up." Marcus leaned in. "Covered what up?" Kevin swallowed. "If a body had injuries that didn't match the story, they'd fix it. Change the clothes, makeup, sometimes worse. Did that happen to my daughter?" "I don't know," Kevin said. "But if you saw bruises, if there was dirt, someone messed up, and they tried to hide it." Julia looked at him hard. "Will you go on record?" Kevin's hands trembled. "No, they'll come after me. They always do." "They already came after me," Marcus said quietly. "They sent threats, broke my car window. They want me to shut up." Kevin looked down, ashamed. "I'll think about it," he muttered, then left. Julia turned to Marcus. "We dig deeper. If he won't talk, we find someone who will." Later that night, Marcus returned home to find his garage door spray-painted in thick red letters. "Stop." His breath caught, his chest tightened. They weren't just warning him now, they were getting closer. He walked inside, locked every door, and stared at his daughter's last drawing, still pinned to the fridge. He wasn't stopping. They took her. Now he was going to make them pay. The words on the garage door remained for hours after Marcus had scrubbed and scraped them away. "Stop." It echoed in his mind long after the paint was gone. That morning, the air around his house felt different. Thicker, charged, as if someone were watching from the shadows, waiting to see what his next move would be. But Marcus didn't stop. If anything, the threat made him more resolute. Julia met him at a quiet corner table in her office's shared workspace, a clutter of folders, coffee cups, and a laptop with an ever-glowing screen. She handed him a stack of papers. Public complaints filed against Eternal Rest Funeral Home. Some had been redacted, others mysteriously dropped. Lawsuits that never reached trial. Grieving families silenced with settlements. "It's worse than I thought," she muttered. "There's a pattern. Every few years, suspicious circumstances, inconsistencies in cause of death, rushed services." Marcus scanned the names. A few stood out, one especially. A woman named Tanya Griggs. Her son had died during a routine dental procedure. The funeral home's autopsy didn't match the hospital's. "I want to talk to her," Marcus said. Julia nodded. "Already working on it, but we need more than patterns. We need voices, witnesses." Before he could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed. Another blocked number. His pulse quickened. He answered. This time there was no silence. A low voice spoke one word before hanging up. "Barry." Marcus sat frozen for several seconds, hand clenched around the phone. Julia watched him carefully. "They're escalating," she said, "but we push back harder." Later that afternoon, they drove together to a nearby suburb to meet Tanya Griggs. She welcomed them into her small house, her eyes tired but sharp, her grip firm when she shook Marcus's hand. "I saw your daughter's name in the article," she said, guiding them to a living room lined with photos. "I'm sorry. I wish I could say I was surprised." She brought out her son's files, autopsy reports, insurance claims, notes from a private investigator she hired for a few weeks before money ran out. "They changed things," she said bitterly. "He had bruises, deep ones, like someone held him down, but the funeral director told me to stop asking questions, said I'd risk my son's dignity." Her voice trembled at the edge of anger. "And then I got a letter. No return address. It just said, 'Let him rest.'" Julia took careful notes. Marcus felt a familiar surge of sick realization. This wasn't isolated. It was systemic. That evening, Julia updated her article, releasing a second piece titled "Buried Silence." She detailed the new testimonies, the growing number of families coming forward. In the comments, dozens of people shared similar stories. Names, photos, questions that had never been answered. Marcus spent the night refreshing the page, watching as the truth spread like fire. But fire attracts attention. At 2:47 a.m., his phone lit up again. This time, it was a message. A photo of Logan, sleeping in his bed. Marcus's heart stopped. He leapt from the couch, raced to his son's room, and burst in. Logan sat up with a start, eyes wide in the dark. "Dad?" Marcus checked every window, every door. All locked. He turned on every light, his breath shallow, sweat beating at his temples. They had been watching. They had been inside. He called Julia immediately. "They threatened Logan," he said. "They were in my house." "We need protection," she said. "I'll get you a contact, someone I trust, former law enforcement." The next day, a man named Frank Morgan appeared at Marcus's door. He was broad-shouldered, with an old scar running across his jaw and eyes that had seen too much. "I'm not a cop anymore," Frank said, "but I know how this works. You're poking a wasp nest. They want you afraid." "I'm already afraid," Marcus replied, "but I'm not backing down." Frank nodded approvingly. "Then let's get to work." He helped Marcus install better security. Cameras, reinforced locks, motion lights. He swept the house for bugs, found one, hidden beneath the kitchen table. "Professional grade," Frank muttered. "Whoever's watching you has resources." Meanwhile, Julia continued digging. She found that Eternal Rest Funeral Home was part of a network of facilities owned by a private equity firm. The same firm had ties to medical centers with records of malpractice. One name kept coming up: Richard Tate, silent partner, known for cutting costs and avoiding cameras. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Julia said. "Exposure, and we need more footage." Marcus hesitated. "More?" "The original recording. You said there were movements, sounds. Can we analyze it further?" They brought the flash drive to a trusted audio engineer in Julia's network. She worked in a sound studio and specialized in forensic audio. Her name was Val. She listened carefully, then enhanced the background frequencies. What she uncovered chilled them all. Behind the two voices was a third sound, a muffled, desperate rasp, almost like breathing, shallow, labored. "I think," Val said slowly, "I think someone was alive during this recording." Marcus's throat tightened. "You're sure?" "Not entirely, but I can isolate the waveform. Look at the peaks. It's rhythmic, organic." Val paused the playback and zoomed in on the spectrogram. There it was, a small, stuttering pulse, like breath. Marcus turned away, unable to process it. If Elia had been alive, if she had suffered, he stepped outside and sat on the curb, his hands in his hair, the weight of everything pressing down. Clara arrived soon after, having taken the first flight she could. She sat beside him in silence for a long time before speaking. "I believe you now," she said softly. "I'm sorry I didn't sooner. They threatened Logan." "I'm not leaving," she said. "We'll protect him. Together." That night, Frank stood guard while Marcus stayed in Logan's room. The boy slept fitfully, murmuring in his sleep. At one point, he sat up, eyes glassy. "She was screaming," he whispered. "Under the tree. I heard her, but I didn't know what to do." Marcus's chest cracked open. "It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong." Logan lay back down, but the image haunted Marcus. Under the tree. The same one Elia had drawn, the same one in the woods behind the playground. He remembered the drawing, unfinished, hung on the fridge. He walked to the kitchen, pulled it down, and stared at it. 3 figures beneath a tree. One incomplete. He looked closer. The tree had something else drawn near its base. A small, black shape. A person, watching. Marcus grabbed his jacket. "I have to go back to that tree," he said to Frank. "You're not going alone," Frank replied. At dawn, the two of them returned to the woods behind the playground. Dew clung to the grass. The tree loomed tall, ancient, its trunk scarred by time. They circled it slowly. And then Marcus saw it. A patch of disturbed earth, fresh. He dropped to his knees, hands clawing at the dirt. Frank joined him, pulling back layers of soil. They didn't dig far before they found it. Fabric. A piece of a child's shirt. The same shirt Elia had been wearing that day. It was torn, stained with something dark and long-dried. And next to it, a shoe. Tiny, purple, the kind Elia loved. Marcus sat back, his breath ragged. They had brought her here, and someone had tried to bury the evidence. "I think," Frank said quietly, "we just found your proof." Marcus stared at the items in the ground, his heart aching with rage and sorrow. They had stolen her life. Now he was going to expose every single one of them. The shoe and torn shirt fragment lay on the kitchen table like sacred relics, encased in sealed evidence bags Frank had brought from his personal stash. Marcus stared at them, his hands shaking, mind racing. They had found them buried under that tree. Elia's tree. The same tree in her drawing. The same tree where, Logan now admitted, he had last seen his sister alive. The day's shock hadn't worn off. It clung to Marcus like sweat. Julia arrived within the hour, her face grim when she saw the evidence. She pulled on gloves and examined the items carefully, photographing them from multiple angles. "This is your turning point," she said. "These are physical artifacts. They place her somewhere other than where the police claimed she died, and they were hidden. That's no accident." Marcus sat down, exhausted but wired. "The police never searched that area, did they?" "No," Julia said. "According to the official report, the incident occurred near the playground slide. They never looked in the woods." Frank leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "We need to move fast. If they realize you're close, they'll come harder. You need visibility. Now." Julia nodded. "I'll publish everything tonight." Before she left, she turned to Marcus. "One more thing. I want to talk to Logan again." Marcus hesitated. "He's just a kid. He's been through enough." "He remembers more than he says," Julia said. "Sometimes children suppress trauma, but it leaks out in dreams, drawings." Marcus looked at her. "Then go slow." That evening, she sat beside Logan at the kitchen table. He was drawing again. Another picture. of the tree, this one more detailed. Julia didn't interrupt. She waited until he paused. "Logan," she said gently, "do you remember what you saw that day?" The boy's pencil stopped. "There was a man," he said quietly. "He was wearing a hoodie, black. I saw him near the woods." "Did Elia see him too?" "She said she wanted to see what he dropped, a shiny thing. It was a necklace." "Did you see where they went?" He shook his head. "She told me to wait by the swings. I did, but she didn't come back." Julia's heart ached. "It's okay. He did the right thing." Marcus stood nearby, silent, his face carved in pain. Every word hit like a hammer. After Logan went to bed, Julia turned to Marcus. "We're looking at a possible abduction. The fall was staged, and someone made sure the truth was buried, literally." She kept her word. That night, her next article went live. Grief and Deception, a father's fight against the silence. It included excerpts from Kevin Foster's unofficial testimony, audio from the coffin, images of the found items, and details of other families who had come forward. The piece exploded online. Shares, comments, reposts. By morning, local news had picked it up. Protesters gathered outside Eternal Rest Funeral Home, chanting Elia's name, but with attention came consequence. At 5:43 a.m., Marcus's phone buzzed. Another message, this time a video. Security footage of Frank Morgan beating a man unconscious in a bar years ago. It was old, but clear. A warning. Frank scoffed when Marcus showed him. "They're digging for leverage. Doesn't change anything." "Are you sure?" Frank nodded. "I've made peace with my past. They can leak it if they want. Let them burn with me." Hours later, Julia got a call from Kevin. "I'll talk," he said, voice shaky. "But not alone. I want a lawyer, a reporter, witnesses." She agreed immediately. The meeting was set for that evening in a law office in the next town. Marcus, Julia, Frank, and Kevin sat in a room with cameras rolling. The lawyer recorded everything. Kevin looked pale, thin, but his eyes were steady as he spoke. "I worked at Eternal Rest for 8 years. I saw a lot. At first it was just cutting corners, skipping embalming steps, switching coffins. Then it got worse." He swallowed hard. "They started covering up things. When someone died under suspicious circumstances, we were told to make the body match the paperwork. If someone had bruises, we covered them. If their cause of death didn't match, we adjusted it. Doctors signed what they were told to sign." Julia leaned forward. "Did you see this happen with children?" Kevin closed his eyes. "Yes, once. A girl named Marissa, same age as Elia. She'd been injured. The coroner said it was an accident, but her wrists looked like she'd been held down. Her mother was told she fell from a horse. And Elia? I didn't handle her personally, but the buzz inside was that it was another fix-it job." Marcus's fists clenched. Kevin looked at him. "They're afraid of exposure. That's why they're coming after you." Julia ended the interview and secured the footage. Later that night, she published Kevin's testimony with the headline, "The Man Who Knew Too Much." The backlash was immediate. More families came forward. A mother from 2 towns over, a veteran's widow, a nurse who once worked ER shifts with a doctor named Robert Heller, the man who signed Elia's death certificate. Patterns emerged. Fast-tracked burials, minimal autopsies, sealed reports. Marcus watched it unfold, numb. Then came another blow. At 11:02 p.m., his front window shattered. A brick landed on the floor. Taped to it, a message. "She's gone. Let her stay that way." Marcus called Frank, who arrived minutes later, gun holstered, eyes blazing. "They're panicking," he said. "That's desperation." Julia arrived soon after, visibly shaken. We're pushing them into a corner. We need to finish this." Frank agreed. "Let's expose everything, names, dates, connections." The following morning, Julia and her team worked non-stop. They mapped out the network. Eternal Rest was a front for a group called Ascendia Holdings, a shell corporation owned by Richard Tate. Ascendia had contracts with 3 regional hospitals, all with red flags. Marcus stared at the wall of documents and red string. "They've been profiting off the dead." Julia nodded. "And covering their mistakes." She turned to him. "We're almost there." That night, Marcus sat with Logan as he fell asleep. The boy seemed calmer, more peaceful. His drawing from earlier sat on the bedside table. It was the same scene, the tree, but this time all 3 figures were smiling. Elia was complete, whole. Underneath, in careful handwriting, Logan had written, "Now you see her too." Marcus's breath caught. He kissed his son's forehead, turned out the light, and whispered into the darkness, "I promise you, baby girl, they're going to see everything." The shattered glass remained on the living room floor longer than Marcus would have liked. Even after Frank swept it into a bag and replaced the window with plywood, the air inside the house felt exposed, fragile. Logan asked if they could sleep in the same room again. Marcus didn't hesitate. For the next few nights, they both stayed in the master bedroom, Clara sleeping on the couch downstairs, Frank in a chair near the door with his hand resting on the handle of his pistol. No one spoke about the brick, but its silence hung in the air like smoke. Julia's articles continued gaining traction. Kevin's testimony lit a fire under the public, and the list of families with suspicious funeral experiences kept growing. A senator issued a statement calling for a federal audit of the funeral home industry. A local TV crew showed up outside Marcus's house, but he refused to speak until he had something final, undeniable, something that couldn't be spun or buried. Late one night, Julia called with a breakthrough. "They're reopening Elia's case," she said breathlessly. "The department's getting too much heat. The district attorney wants to avoid bad press." Marcus was silent for a moment. "What does that mean? Are they charging someone?" "Not yet, but they're assigning a new detective, someone who isn't connected to Harris or the funeral home." He paced the living room. "Do they want to speak with me?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., they want everything." When Marcus walked into the station the next morning, he was met by Detective Alicia Williams, a tall, composed woman with calm eyes and a clipped voice. She ushered him into a conference room and asked for the recordings, the photos, the physical evidence, everything. He handed her the flash drive, the audio files, the photo of the buried shirt and shoe. Julia sat beside him, quiet but ready. Williams plugged in the drive and listened to the recording in full. When the faint voice whispered, "Quick, no one will notice," her pen paused above her notepad. "And this was recorded inside the coffin?" she asked. "Yes," Marcus said, "before the burial." She nodded. "And the dirt under her nails?" "I saw it myself." Williams leaned back. "We'll need to exhume the body." The word hit him like ice water. He'd known it was coming. Still, the idea of disturbing Elia again tore at something raw inside him. But he nodded. "Do it." The exhumation was scheduled quickly. With media pressure mounting, the court order came through within 48 hours. On the morning of the 3rd day, Marcus stood in the cemetery, Clara beside him. Logan kept away with Frank back at the house. The forensic team worked quietly but efficiently. The coffin was raised. The lid opened. Even the technicians looked uneasy. Elia's body had changed. The bruises on her wrists were now darker, more visible. The undertaker's makeup had begun to fade, revealing patterns beneath that suggested restraint. Her fingernails still had dirt caked underneath. One forensic pathologist stepped back, removing his gloves with visible discomfort. "This doesn't align with the hospital report," he said. Williams was quiet. "We'll need a full autopsy." The casket was resealed and taken to the county lab. Marcus didn't follow. He couldn't. That night, he sat outside alone, staring up at the stars. Clara brought him coffee, placing it beside him without a word. He looked at her, then down at his hands. "She was alive," he whispered, "even if only for minutes. She was alive, and they buried her." Clara knelt beside him, her own eyes wet. "We're going to make them pay for every second." The results came 3 days later. Williams met them at the station again. "Alia's cause of death wasn't blunt force trauma," she said. "It was asphyxiation. Manual. There are signs of smothering, compression around the mouth and nose. The wrist bruises are consistent with restraint. Internal injuries contradict the fall theory." Marcus felt the world tilt. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "She was buried alive, wasn't she?" Julia asked. "There was soil in her throat," Williams said quietly. "Not much, but enough." Silence. Devastating. Shattering. The police officially reopened the case as a homicide. Within 24 hours, Eternal Rest Funeral Home was shut down by court order. Authorities raided the building, seizing documents and computers. Richard Tate's name surfaced again. His financial signature was on dozens of transactions linking the funeral home to the hospitals involved. A doctor named Robert Heller, the same who signed Alia's death certificate, was placed under investigation. Julia's articles connected him to several previous questionable death certifications. The media exploded. National news picked up the story. Marcus became a name the world recognized overnight. But he didn't care about fame. He wanted justice. But justice came slowly. Tate disappeared. Heller lawyered up. The funeral home's top employees denied involvement, claiming ignorance or procedural error. Still, momentum built. One by one, more whistleblowers came forward. A mortician from another state, a nurse, even an administrative assistant who admitted to shredding documents under Tate's orders. It became clear that Alia's case had ripped open a hidden system, an industry where the vulnerable were exploited, where mistakes were buried, literally, and where money always came before truth. Amid all of it, Logan began speaking more. At first, just to Marcus, then to Julia. He told her about dreams, about the man in the woods, about hearing Alia call out, but being too afraid to move. One night he said, "She wasn't scared, Dad. She told me she'd be okay. She made me promise to go home." Marcus knelt beside him. "You did everything right. You were brave." Logan leaned against him. "She said the light would come back. That's what she called it, the light." Marcus blinked, then smiled weakly. She was the light. In the following days, Julia released another article, this time titled "A System of Silence: The Hidden Crimes Behind the Funeral Industry." It was her most in-depth piece yet, including interviews, timelines, names, and allegations. She called out the regulators, the politicians, the medical boards. The fallout was swift. 2 hospital directors resigned. A state representative announced plans to introduce new legislation for stricter oversight. Protesters held vigils outside courthouses, holding signs that read "Alia Johnson, say her name." But the threats didn't stop. Another letter arrived at Marcus's door. "This ends now, or next time it's the boy." Frank installed a secondary alarm system and began sleeping in the hallway. Marcus refused to back down. He had already lost too much. He wasn't going to lose his son, too. Marcus stood at the center of his living room staring at the letter in his hands. The words were written in blocky capital letters with a black marker, crude but intentional. This ends now, or next time it's the boy. His fingers clenched around the paper, crumpling it slightly. It wasn't the first threat, but it was the most direct, mentioning Logan had crossed a line no one was allowed to cross. Frank took the letter and sealed it into a plastic evidence bag without a word. Clara hovered nearby, her arms folded, her jaw tight with rage and fear. Marcus had tried to keep Logan unaware, but even a 10-year-old could sense tension in every adult in the house. The boy barely slept anymore. "I'll handle security," Frank said, "but we're not hiding. You're too close now. They're desperate." That same morning, Julia called. Her voice was tense. "Kevin's been arrested." Marcus's heart dropped. "What? Why?" "Possession of stolen property. They claim he took classified documents from the funeral home after he was fired. But the timing's too perfect. It's retaliation. Can we help him?" "I've already contacted a lawyer, but it's a message. They want us to know they're still pulling strings." Marcus sat down, staring at Logan's latest drawing on the table. It was simpler than the others, just a hand reaching out from the dirt. Another hand above, reaching down to grasp it. The caption below read, "I've got you." Later that day, Julia arranged a press conference. Marcus stood behind her as she delivered a powerful statement to the cameras. She spoke of systemic abuse, the lives buried not just in the ground but in paperwork, negligence, and greed. She named Richard Tate publicly. She connected him to Ascendia Holdings, to Eternal Rest, to Dr. Heller. She accused the system of failing children, veterans, elderly patients, anyone who couldn't speak for themselves. The media firestorm was immediate. National networks ran with the story. Talk shows debated the implications. Julia was invited to speak on air. Protesters multiplied. People from across the country shared their stories, sent emails, letters, photos. What had started as one father's tragedy had turned into something far larger. But it also meant that Marcus and his family were now under a spotlight and a target. Frank began moving them between safe houses. One night at a colleague's cabin in the woods, another at a borrowed apartment across town. Each time Logan asked why, Marcus made up excuses. Game night, sleepover, adventure. But the boy saw through the words. "I know it's because of Elia," he said one night, curled up on the couch beside his father. Marcus wrapped an arm around him. "We're going to keep you safe. I promise." Logan nodded. "You already are." The next morning, Julia received an anonymous email. The subject line read, "Ascendia's Real Operation." Inside was a PDF attachment, hundreds of pages, internal emails, invoices, and contracts, some marked confidential. The source was untraceable, but it contained a trove of damning information, evidence that Ascendia had been instructing funeral homes to streamline post-mortem protocols to minimize costs and liability. Details on falsified documents, payments to medical professionals for silence, references to PRH-17 cases, a coded term used in multiple emails when referring to mishandled bodies. One file was labeled Johnson, category PRH-17. Julia's hands trembled as she scrolled. "They documented it," she whispered. "They knew exactly what they were doing." She printed the files and brought them to Marcus. Together, they delivered them to Detective Williams, who sat in silence as she reviewed the first few pages. Her expression hardened. "This is more than enough to escalate the case. We'll be issuing warrants for arrests." That same evening, the news broke. Dr. Heller had been taken into custody. 3 executives at Ascendia Holdings were detained. A formal investigation was opened into Eternal Rest and 5 other funeral homes under its umbrella. Public trust crumbled. State officials issued apologies. Lawsuits began flooding in. But Richard Tate was still missing. Julia worked around the clock, chasing leads. Eventually, she found a financial trail leading offshore. An abandoned warehouse property listed under one of Tate's shell companies. Frank drove them there. The place was dark, silent, its windows boarded up. But inside, they found boxes of shredded documents, discarded medical supplies, and evidence that bodies had been moved here temporarily before final transport. One box contained discarded name tags from funeral home cadavers, several belonging to people whose families had reported strange funerals. It was a house of horrors. Julia documented everything. Photos, videos. Her article that night was simple in title but devastating in content. Ashes of Deceit. Within hours, the governor called for an emergency commission. Several lawmakers publicly pledged reform. The Department of Health and Human Services began conducting surprise inspections statewide. Marcus watched all of it with a numb heart. Justice was coming. But it didn't bring Elia back. That night, Logan had another nightmare. He screamed in his sleep, trembling violently. When Marcus rushed in, the boy clung to him, sobbing. "I saw her again," he choked. "She was trapped, but she smiled. She told me to tell you. He'll see." Marcus held him tighter. "Who?" Logan wiped his eyes. "The man who made her sleep. She said he'd see, like you do." Marcus didn't know what it meant, but something inside him clicked. The man who made her sleep. Dr. Heller? Or someone else? He brought the story to Detective Williams the next morning. She considered Logan's words carefully. "We're interrogating Heller tomorrow. I'll keep that in mind." But Tate was still out there. Later that day, Marcus received another envelope in the mail. Inside, a single photo, a man boarding a private plane. Side view, black sunglasses, sharp suit. Richard Tate. And on the back, scribbled in ink, "Ask the morgue. He's not done yet." Marcus stared at the message, pulse racing. This wasn't over. Not yet. The photo of Richard Tate boarding the plane rested on Marcus's kitchen table like an unfinished sentence. The handwriting on the back, "Ask the morgue." "He's not done yet," haunted him more than any previous threat. It wasn't just a warning. It was a clue. Julia sat across from him, her eyes scanning the image, her jaw tight. "This wasn't sent by the people trying to stop us," she said. "This is from someone who wants him caught." Marcus nodded. "And they knew exactly how to get my attention." Frank joined them, sipping black coffee, the silence between them heavy. "We know Tate didn't leave the country. That plane was grounded an hour later. He never made it past state lines." "Then he's hiding somewhere local," Julia said. "I think he's in the morgue," Marcus murmured. Frank blinked. "You mean literally?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Or near it. Whoever wrote that message wanted us to look there." Julia pulled up the public registry. "There are 3 licensed morgues in the county, and 1 decommissioned facility off Route 9. Shut down 2 years ago. No activity, but still privately owned." Frank leaned in. "Let me guess. By one of Ascendia's shells?" Julia confirmed it with a few keystrokes. "Shellmark Solutions. Registered address matches the closed morgue." By nightfall, they were driving toward Route 9, the abandoned morgue looming in the distance like something pulled from a nightmare. Its windows were blacked out, its roof half collapsed in the back. Frank parked 100 yards away, and the 3 of them approached on foot, flashlights in hand. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and chemicals long since spoiled. The smell of decay clung to the walls. Their footsteps echoed against linoleum floors. Julia held up her phone, recording everything. They checked room after room. Empty gurneys, rusted equipment, cabinets filled with cracked vials, nothing definitive. Then they reached the back office. The door was locked. Frank pulled a set of tools from his coat and worked the lock until it clicked. The room inside was clean, too clean. A folding desk, a burner phone, a stack of files, a coffee mug still warm. Julia moved quickly, photographing everything. Marcus opened the top drawer. Inside, he found passports, fake IDs, a badge with the name R. Tate. "Bingo," Frank muttered. A creak behind them froze the air. They turned. A man stood in the doorway, tall, trim, gray at the temples. Richard Tate. He didn't run, didn't raise his hands. He just looked at Marcus like someone studying a stranger. "You're the father," he said. Marcus's blood boiled. "You buried my daughter alive?" Tate's face showed no emotion. "No, I buried a mistake." Julia pulled her phone up, recording. "You just confessed." Tate smiled faintly. "Confession? No," I clarified. Marcus lunged. Frank caught him before his fists connected. "You're going to prison?" Marcus hissed. Tate didn't flinch. "You think prison scares me? You think any of this matters? You want the truth? Your daughter wasn't the first. She wasn't even the worst. She was just one more." Julia's hands trembled. "Why?" Tate looked at her like the question bored him. "Because it's easy. Because no one asks. Because grief is silence, and silence can be shaped." Frank pulled out a pair of zip ties. "Let's see how silent you are in a cell." They delivered Tate to the authorities themselves, walking him into the station with Julia's footage as evidence and Tate's files in hand. Detective Williams was waiting, already informed. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked Tate as he was processed. "I've built an empire," he replied. "Now it's dust," she said. Within the week, charges were filed against Tate for conspiracy, negligent homicide, fraud, obstruction, and a half-dozen other crimes. Kevin was released from jail, and his name was cleared. Dr. Heller's license was suspended indefinitely. The funeral homes under Ascendia's umbrella were closed, pending investigation. Marcus stood beside Julia during a televised town hall meeting, addressing the community. Cameras flashed. Reporters called his name. But when it was his turn to speak, Marcus looked past the lights, past the microphones, and focused on the people watching from home. The families who had also lost someone, who had questioned but never been heard. "My daughter was 10 years old," he began. "Her name was Elia. She liked drawing. She liked sunshine. She trusted people. And she was buried alive by a system that was supposed to protect her. And when I asked for answers, they called me crazy. They told me to let it go. But grief isn't quiet. And silence doesn't mean peace. It means no one's listening. I'm listening now. And I won't stop." The room stood silent. Then applause broke out. Not polite, not obligatory, earnest, raw. Days later, Marcus visited Elia's grave. The cemetery felt different now. Not lighter, but honest. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting long shadows over the grass. He knelt by her headstone, fresh flowers in hand. "They know what happened," he whispered. "They said your name." Clara stood a few steps behind, giving him space. "They can't hurt anyone else now." He nodded, brushing his fingers over the carved letters. "We did it, baby." A few months passed. The fire faded, but the legacy didn't. Marcus and Clara launched the Elia Johnson Foundation, an organization that provided legal resources and emotional support for families facing funeral fraud, medical abuse, or institutional cover-ups. Julia remained its loudest advocate, running weekly investigative pieces under the banner, "Silent No More." Frank returned to private work, occasionally helping families referred by the foundation. Logan began drawing again, his pictures brighter now. Trees, smiling faces, light. One afternoon, while sorting old boxes, Marcus found Elia's last drawing, the one she'd made the morning she died. He hadn't looked at it since the funeral. It showed 3 figures under a tree. Him, Logan, Elia. But now he noticed something he hadn't before. Tiny letters beneath the image, written in pencil and almost erased by time. "Always together, Dad, no matter what." Marcus framed the drawing and hung it in the living room. Every morning, he saw it. Every night, it reminded him why he fought. He couldn't bring her back, but he'd made sure she wasn't forgotten. And now, because of her, hundreds of voices were finally being heard. Some stories leave a mark. Marcus's journey was painful, but it brought truth to light and gave a voice to the silent. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share your thoughts in the comments, give this video a like, and subscribe for more powerful, real stories that deserve to be heard.